and we do not have any structure which is even remotely similar to it. So we don't have any side effects. Here, you see with the virus, this whole system, same is true for the cancer. This is why we are having so much difficulty coming up with the anti-cancer drugs, right? We cannot differentiate between the normal cell and the infected cell. So there are going to be enormous side effects whenever you go that way, right? This is the list of the drugs that I told you that we are now using. This one, Truvada, is in the story right now. I think a paper was published last Saturday, and I have only briefly seen it. This is for the first time that they think that we can use this drug in the risk group to reduce the risk. But I really personally don't believe in it, because when these studies were done, they were also taking care of other things as well, and even then 60% of them got infected, right? And for the vaccines, it's totally impossible. I'm not saying we will never ever have a vaccine, but based on our present knowledge of immunological memory that I told you. See, the virus is rejected by the immune system. But what happens, once the immune response matures, the virus changes its shape, so it will not be able to do this, right? So you never go to the secondary response, as I told you before. So it will be primary, and primary response is really not good enough. But I think there will be other things that we have not tried it so far. We started just working during last 3-4 years. So I think the more you know about immunology, the less hopeful you are that we will ever have a vaccine against HIV. The less you know about immunology, the more hopeful you are. Right? It doesn't mean that there are no other alternatives. So like, I mentioned Gibran. There's a very famous English saying that the winners don't quit and quitters don't get. You heard that? It's a pretty famous thing, right? So what we are now looking at really goes the innate immune response that I told you before, because it is non-specific. And in those other cases, we have seen some degree of success. We have similar problem with the influenza too. Every year we have a mathematical formula in the data that we gather from around the globe, which tells us that what influenza viruses will be here next season. Many times we make mistakes, okay, and we make new vaccines and new vaccines and new vaccines. Right? What we found is that influenza virus can infect mice as it infects human beings. And we learned that there is a strain of mouse which cannot be infected with influenza virus, no matter whether it's H1N1 or H5N1 or H2N3, it doesn't really matter. It just does not infect because it has a gene. It's called the MX gene, right? So what we are doing is, I think we are now concentrating on the innate immune response. And I think one of the difficulties with the controlling HIV infection is really we are fighting against biology, and biology is far more powerful than the religion and moral value or whatever you call it, right? Look at it, that I think there are two biological activities, and there is so much darn pleasure in it. Whether you are a plant, or you are a human being, or you are a baboon, it doesn't really matter, or a dog or a cat, correct? There is so much joy in it. That's the biology which is actually fooling you, clearly. There is no other reason. So, there's a feeding. If you look at the feeding, you think, look how the signal transduction occurs. You see food, enjoy it, right? You smell it, you enjoy it. You touch it, you enjoy it. You taste it, you enjoy it. If it's far away, pizza, you can smell it here, and there will be a chemotactic activity. And really, sex is very powerful. Those of you who have cats and dogs, and if they are not properly fixed, and if you have a female dog in heat here, from Detroit, other dogs are going to come here and visit them. And this is true for the human beings too, because we are animals after all, right? So I think either, you have to have very high moral values, or there's a religion which can do, or stop you from doing this, right? or we educate the people. But even the education, as I said, we are against a very strong force of biology. Religion cannot keep up with it. Legal system cannot keep up with it, because this is why we are here to really reproduce. And again, I said, before you get involved in those type of things, I told you, right, always look in between the lines and see what it is. Love, I think, is a 4-letter word, means nothing. When a person tells you, I love you, just step back for a while, think about it. Maybe that person is in heat, really. and it will go away. There is no love. Because if you look at the love, it's a beautiful word. But you know what the degree of love is? You cannot differentiate in the extreme case of love between the lover and the lovee, if I can use that word. It's like a drop of water which falls into the ocean. That's true love. But what happens in this case? The drop of water lost its identity. It becomes an ocean. That is true love. It doesn't exist on this. These are all the games. So I think I'm going to stop here. I wish you a wonderful and a happy life. I will answer any questions if you guys have. Yeah.
I know it's kind of grasping at straws based on what you said, but are there any epitopes on the GP120 protein or the other proteins that the HIV requires that we could target?
Yes, there are. But those epitopes, certain part of the GP120 and GP41 changes, the other stock remains the same. But there are no neutralizing epitopes there. So now what happens is that if you make an antibody against that, antibodies have Fc fragment, and lot of other cells have the receptors for the Fc. So actually virus uses this to get into other cells where there are no actual receptors. It is far more smarter. It doesn't have a nervous system, but it's really, really a smart entity, no doubt about it. Yes?
Greg, I have a twofold question. Do you think HIV always existed, and in a more monogamous society the people would die, and or do you think it was something like, say, the sexual revolution happened in the 60s and we started seeing HIV 15, 20 years later? Do you think it was something that was created by this very frequent exchange of bodily fluids, and are we, by continuing that lifestyle, potentially creating another HIV?
Even if we stop that lifestyle, there will still be new viruses and new microorganisms which will be constantly emerging. So there's a whole new subject, the emergence of these things. These viruses, see, there are two different theories of evolution of viruses, how viruses came into being, because they are simpler than cells. So the Darwinian theory is that the simpler life was created first, and then it got complicated and complicated. There is an alternate theory of evolution for the viruses. Yes, I think, as I said, the proper education, and see if we can surmount that big biology behind it. Because the advantage here is that this virus does not infect any other species except us. So it should be, smallpox, we eliminated the smallpox. The reason for that, and it's the only infectious disease which has been eliminated from the face of this globe. And this happens because there is no other host, and we came up with a very effective vaccine. So the smallpox was eliminated. So no matter what we will do, the microorganisms will come up with the other. But it's true that viruses will take advantage of our behavior and survival for the fittest for them too. So I don't know whether I answered the question or not, but that's how I feel.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Okay,
for coming.
guys.
Please have